Yo, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of From Grateful to Greatness. I am your host, Mario Kaleo, and every episode begins with me, of course, being grateful. So, I'm grateful for my wife, my family, my friends, everybody who follows me on social media, all of you for taking the time to listen to this podcast, and God and the universe for allowing your boy another day on this planet to talk to you. I'm also grateful because this is the first... I don't know what you would call it. It's not the first because that's kind of like we're dissing RJ, but RJ's my best friend, and he was the first guest on the show. But this is the first like actual interview guest I've ever had on this podcast, and that is Richard Taylor Jr. What's going on, man?
Hey, what's up, bro? Thanks for having me. I'm honored.
Yeah, man. The honor's over here, man. Thank you. So actually, is Junior your father's Richard Taylor as well?
Yeah.
All right, cool. But yeah, so Richard Taylor is a fellow author as well, but he's a little bit ahead of me. He wrote 3 books by now. I'm right about that, right?
Yeah, man. Working on my first children's book now, so it'll be 4 soon. But
wow,
you know, yeah,
there's something I'll probably never do as a children's book.
Well, you know what? The children's book is going to be different. It's not going to be like Cat in the Hat, but it will. I really wanted to take the same concepts from the books that I have right now and just, make them more, expand them a little bit and make them more understandable, man. Because a lot of the problems that I had, started off when I was younger.
Yeah, that is something I can definitely relate to, man. And so, I mean, for those of you listening to this that are used to what I've done in the past but never have heard me actually do any interviews like this, the reason I'm doing it is because I really wanted to expose you guys to other people besides me that are doing the same kind of things, maybe in different arenas, maybe in the same, but this guy, Richard, I stumbled upon you, I believe, on Instagram, I don't know, maybe like 6 months ago or something. Mm-hmm. And I was pretty aside from the fact that we share the weight loss aspect, I was really blown away at how similar we really are in terms of things we dealt with, and also the fact that you're pretty damn funny, dude.
I appreciate that, man. Look, I got my silly side, man. I'm it's just as serious as I am. I like to have fun. What can I say? I like to have fun, man.
Yeah, I definitely try to keep things half funny, half serious,
half-assed.
But even today, man, I was on Instagram and Richard I posted a series of videos about being stuck in his car, getting his. I mean, I was laughing. I was literally laughing for real, dude. That shit was funny.
Man, I was so surprised too because I legit got in the car and never got a chance to get out. He just started jacking the car up as soon as I pulled into the space, and I'm like, so you're gonna change an entire tire with me in here? Okay, that's I'm like, why not have some fun?
This dude started singing Celine Dion, the My Heart Will Go On. I was like, wow, this is.
I felt like I was stuck out there in the water on top of that chest, just waiting for somebody to come and save me, man. It was a mess.
Yeah, that was funny as hell. But yeah, like I said, that's one of the main reasons I gravitated towards you, is because a lot of people that do the motivational thing tend to really be super serious all the time, and not that there's anything wrong with being serious, but I do like it when people can kind of show a little bit more of the real goofiness of life. And
absolutely.
Also, I want to mention real quick that Richard's website is unashamednation.com, and the 3 books you wrote are Between the Dream, and then the other one was Process of Reconstruction.
Yeah, so Unashamed, the Process of Reconstruction.
And then one that
Unashamed was the first book. That's what kicked it all off.
Okay, and then the one I just read was Love Between My Scars, which is the most recent book.
Yeah.
And man, before I go and talk too much, because I usually do, but I want you to tell everybody, at least go ahead and tell them what's the most important stuff you think they need to know about you, and a little bit about your story and your background. Because I don't want to get anything screwed up. I'd rather have you tell your story than me. So
it's all good. It's all good. No, I'm Richard Taylor, man. That's just me. I'm a people person. I have a heart for people. I'm a speaker and author. I do a lot of consulting on the side of building, mentoring programs and just creating platforms for other people to be in the spaces where they can tap into their gifts. Um, a lot of my story, man, comes from my own personal struggle, just dealing with different issues growing up, from depression to which led into, attempted suicides, which led into the obesity factor, being in an abusive relationship and being a victim of domestic abuse. Man, just the lifestyle of a failure, that mindset of feeling worthless, So my heart literally for people has come from my own personal struggle and seeing so many others going through it.
Yeah, man. When I was reading this book, I had, and I literally read it in like 4 hours, and
Oh,
um, and
wow.
and it's because the book that I wrote was similar in the realness of it,
Hmm.
and that was something that like hit home for me big time. Was like, man, this dude is just not afraid to put it out there, like, and I wonder while I read it. I mean, I want to talk about certain aspects of it if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
But one thing I wondered when I read it was when I came out with my book, I had people ask me questions about the fact that, like, whoa, like, that happened to you? And they were like, wow, I can't believe you were so honest about it. When you released the book, did you have that happen? I mean, were there friends and family who were like, whoa, like, they had no idea? I mean, how'd you handle that?
I mean, there's a lot of people that didn't have an idea, and I think even with you talking about with the third book, the new one.
Yeah.
Um, well, it was a lot. It was a lot easier because the first book kind of gave a general consensus, right? But
Yeah.
this book, it dived into it, so it was a lot of people who knew, but I think the depth of it really threw them off because they saw that there were no like holds bars, like this was really the nitty gritty of it. And I think that aspect really kind of caused them to see me in a different light then. So it wasn't really a bad thing. Like even my folks, man, my mom and dad, my mom, as she read it, she was telling me that there were certain parts in there that she didn't really know and understand. And, she was like, it hurt to know that you were going through this now and not being able to know then and help.
Yeah, man. My mom, that for me, because I had dealt with like being sexually abused as a kid, and I didn't really even tell my mom until I think I was maybe like 29, and I'm 34 now.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's weird because your parents. My father never knew, unfortunately. He passed away before I ever told him. But you know, I I felt like they must have probably thought like, what in the hell is wrong with my son? Like,
Right.
and then finally to come out and tell her, and she had the same kind of revelation, like, my God, like, why didn't you say something sooner?
Right.
And yeah, that's the tough part, is because you don't want to. I don't know. I guess for a lot of people listening to this, maybe it's like you don't want to say anything because you don't want to burden them with what you're going through,
Right.
and it's difficult anyway just to straight up bring it up, to admit it to somebody. But yeah, man, I mean, I as I read through your book, I mean, I'm looking at it right now, and I mean, like, the parts about you being bullied, I mean, once again, that hit home for me because I used to get my ass kicked for being overweight and all
Wow.
all that stuff. So I mean, how did you overcome that, like, dealing with that stuff?
Man, I think for me, overcoming it really just came from a lot of it really just came from uh, having to go through the trials and tribulations of it. And I was kind of forced to deal with it after the fact. Like, I didn't deal with it during the process of it. I dealt with it after it was over and not realizing what I allowed to transpire as far as like seeds that were sown and things that pulled me into dark spaces. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was literally after the dark spaces of dealing with the depression, dealing with the hurt from those things that happened, and then after hitting rock bottom with that final suicide attempt, it really became one of those things then where it was like, because I knew I needed to make a change, a part of making the change was having to go back and literally um, trace back to where it all started. It wasn't one of those band-aid fixes. It wasn't something that could happen overnight. This wasn't meant to be quick or easy. This literally meant like having to go back, and that's how I was able to face it after I hit rock bottom. Now, do I recommend that for everybody? Absolutely not. If we could deal with it ahead of time, I always encourage and urge, like, man, I feel like we as a people have the capacity to get things right the first time around. Sometimes we stay stuck in stuff, and that's what I did. So for me, I literally had to be taken to the brink of extinction, right? And just to be brought back and then deal with it in that regard.
Yeah, I can relate on that as well because I didn't really change my life until I almost died. So
Right,
I
right.
I always tell
Twice.
people twice. Yeah, I always tell people that if I wish I was smarter. And people say you're not stupid, but it's like no. I mean, what I mean is what you just said is like I wish I had the foresight to have taken care of these things when I should have, rather
Right.
than waiting to hit a rock bottom moment for that to happen.
Hmm.
Because not everybody's lucky enough to get past the rock bottom. Sometimes
Right.
people stay there.
Absolutely. No, you're absolutely right. No, you're absolutely right.
And yeah, man. I mean, once again, I'm basically right now. I'm looking through your book because there's so many parts of it that I like made notes in, and just stuff that hit home. Like the part where you said, "Why can't you be more like the popular kids?" Man, dude, like for me, I read that part, and it's rare for me where a book will like hit home enough where you'll get me to like tear up, and like
Wow.
that right there, I was like, whoa, like because that legit is like something I would ask myself back in the day, like, what am I doing wrong? Why don't more people like me? Why don't girls like me? And that, especially that thought, kind of filters into what you were talking about later in the book about getting that acceptance finally, like where women started liking you. Oh
Yeah.
man, dude, that for me became a big addiction. Was when I finally figured out how to like get their attention.
Yeah.
It really started to take over and kind of became like the mask thing that you were talking about as well, where you started to like wear a mask that wasn't really you, but you were doing it because it kind of fed a part of you that you needed to be fed in a way.
Yeah. It was like that. I mean, for me, it was like that. It was the only cover up I had because I didn't know how to deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times when we don't know how to deal, this is what happens. So for me, I was really just in the space of like not knowing what to do, where to go, and how to manage. And because of that, this was the result. And I put on that mask, and I felt like in order for me to really make it, I always needed to hide behind something.
So is that like because there's a part in the book where you talk about the starve the beast thing.
Yeah.
Can you want to explain that to everybody? Because I don't want to mess that up either. Because that's like a really cool concept, and I don't know. I felt like it applied to everything. To me, it kind of hit home when it was more talking about addiction,
Yeah.
but I think it's one of them kind of universal concepts that maybe can apply to all of this. So if you, yeah, go. Can you explain that to everybody real quick?
Absolutely, yeah. So the Starve the Beast thing actually came from me. It was the matter of addictions, you know what I mean? Like we in life, we deal with so many of them. For me, I had several addictions that really led me to this concept of starving the beast. And and it really came from my second book, Between the Dream. That's where it all started. So in this, the concept of Between the Dream, let's break that down real quick. So Between the Dream, I always explain this to people. They say, what does it mean? And I tell them the point between your present moment and your promise is your process. I look at Between the Dream as the process. I'm literally in the space between where I currently am and where I'm going to be one day. What is it going to take for me to get through to get to get to the promise while I'm in this process now? And in the process, one of the biggest things that we face is the beast. A lot of times, the beast, we look at it sometimes and we automatically think, from the standpoint of like a mythical character or, some kind of animal or werewolf, lichen, whatever.
Yeah.
And the reality is that the beast is none of those things. Like the beast are the distractions, the temptations, the negative circles that we keep around us. But even deeper than that, the beast is us. The beast is literally the thing within inside of us that, if spoken to the right way, can literally draw us into the wrong things. And this is something that I got to write that down because I've never actually explained it like that before. But I'm so serious. I'm so serious. Like, I've never explained, but that's the thing. Like, so it's literally like being spoken to in the right way by the wrong things. And what happens is when that wrong thing speaks to that part of us that has that yearning or needs that void filled, we open the doorway to it. And a lot of times we don't realize that the beast that we're battling is ourselves. You know, we blame everything on the external, but the reality is that it starts internally. The issues that we face in life, it's an internal battle. And when we open that doorway, that's when the external really starts to show itself. So what happens when we continue to feed that external, we are literally feeding the beast from the inside out. And with that being the case, we start to give it power to the point where it can now consume us because it no longer needs us to survive, because we've given it so much already that we've been depleted and we've been drained. And now we're in a space where we're basically at, at the submission of the beast at any given moment.
Man, see, now that's why he's who he is. See, that's why he's where he is, man. Because I'm gonna tell you like this, dude. He just put eloquently what I said like a caveman in my book.
But you know what? But some people need it spoken eloquently to them, and other people need it beaten into them with a club. So
yeah,
there's a place in the world for both of.
No, I mean, I love how you put it, because it's so well spoken, so well said, and it's absolutely perfect. And I hope everybody who's listening to this really, really took all that in, because the biggest point you could take from all that is all this stuff is on you, all of it. And I like, when I talked about it, I basically said in my head it's like Lex Luthor and Superman, like that.
Right.
But I mean, that's, like I said, an incredibly simplistic view of how it is, but it really is you against you so much of the time, man. And that, from personal experience, like I said, I mean, the beast of addiction and the beast of, like, doubt. Like, doubt has been probably the thing that has plagued me more than anything in my life, is just not being sure if I'm good enough or what I'm doing is right. Just questioning myself. And that to me is like such I don't know, man. When I read that in your book, I was like, man, that is just such a cool freaking way of looking at it. And really just thank you for putting it like that for everybody, because it's really awesome, man.
Absolutely, man. And I think it's something that we got to keep in the front of our minds too. Like I said, how do we starve the beast? So, we starve the beast. Obviously, we know that things are on ourselves. And don't get me wrong, because when I've broken this whole starve the beast concept down before, I've explained it sometimes to people where it's not always our fault, right?
Yeah.
Some things are inevitable. You said you like to get deep, let's go there. So for you, for example, you talked about being sexually abused as a child, right?
Yes.
I've had this conversation with people before, and in that frame, that's not something that you asked for, right? Like, that's not something that you said, hey, this is what I want. Like, you have these type of situations where things do happen, but even in those moments of them happening, while you couldn't control what was taking place because it's not something that you asked for, at the same time, I think there comes a point in time where we realize the weight of that issue and how we allow it to affect us later on. That portion then becomes a part where we got to put in action and do some work to be able to get that freedom that we need. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man.
And that's the thing. Like, a lot of us choose to stay. So when we say starve the beast, I mean, it looks different for every person, but at the end of the day, the starvation is always going to come from being able to, one, acknowledge the issue for what it is. Two, after you acknowledge it, you got to be in a space where you attack it, right? You acknowledge it, you attack it, you get a chance to learn it, know it from the inside out, as far as the start, the middle, the end, what are the strong points, all of that. And then after that, man, you starve it literally, because you've exposed the truth behind the beast, what it is. Then after that, you got to be in the space where you are choosing a new alternative. And this is what it was for me. So the Starve the Beast concept wasn't just a cute quote. It was literally like what it took for me to get out of the addictions, the acknowledgement, man, being able to know it inside out, and then being able to find an alternative that's going to be beneficial, not just good, but actually beneficial for where I'm trying to go.
I think that's the toughest part for most people to grasp is that, like you said, like there's certain things that you had no control over, right?
Yeah.
But you can always control how you respond to those circumstances. And I think like that's the biggest thing that a lot of people have trouble getting, like grasping, is the concept of how much control they really have over their lives, like over their destiny, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, I mean that really also, again, what you were just talking about reminded me of the fact that like the biggest thing that helped me change my life was I just stopped lying to myself. And I think like with the concepts you're talking about, you have to at first, it's impossible to defeat any of these things without being honest about their existence. You know, like you're not going to be able to beat, you know, food addiction or smoking or whatever the case may be if you sit there and act as if it's not a problem for you. And for me, I think that's what saved my life anyway, was that I just finally saw myself for who I was and was like, all right, now where do we go from here?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so actually on that tip, what was like, how did you lose the weight? I mean, I know you've lost, how much weight have you lost in total now?
About 175 pounds.
Ooh, boy. Wow.
So yeah, I'm trying to
You're
to get my Dwayne Johnson on, man. Little by little, you know, it's tough.
Aren't we all?
Everybody can't just be great overnight, you know. But no, man, yeah. So I 175, man, and a lot of the weight loss early on just came from like working out. But in the midst of working out, I realized that I could only do so much with that. And a lot of it then became just the shift in my diet, which I'm super keen on now, man. I've been getting a lot better at it. I wasn't really educated on how to properly lose weight. So, of course, you know, I tried stupid stuff like, you know, fad diets, or I was just popping back thermogenics at times, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Oxy Elite Pro, which actually was really effective. But you know, not being mindful and knowledgeable of the different things I was putting into my body. And then even during the weight loss, because I was losing so much weight working out and just doing 2-a-days at the gym in college, I wasn't educated on the fact that most of my progression was going to come from the kitchen. And because of that, I was so scared to put back on weight because of my disobedience in my eating that I actually developed an eating disorder. And I dealt with bulimia for about 6 years.
Oh, wow.
So in that space, you know, I literally had to learn my body all over again and understand that the bulimia is a lot more mental than it is physical. And a lot of it has to do with what I choose to put into my body. That's really been like the shift as far as me now being in this space where I can be okay with holding down my food and eating certain things and eating anything really, because I understand what my body does and doesn't need. And then also too, I think the serving size of what it does and doesn't need, because as a kid, I mean, you're talking to somebody who was an all-state quarterback. So for me, like...
I know, I remember reading you played football. Wow, you were all-state, all right.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, man. Like, so for me in that space, I was like, I could eat anything back then.
Yeah.
I was like, one of my uncles used to call me the bottomless pit because I could legit just gorge down food. But then it was kind of like, you know, after a while when I wasn't that active anymore and I wasn't burning calories and body fat the same way, I still had those bad eating habits, and then the depression kicked in, so I was eating more food on top of the already bad habits.
You right? I don't. I really don't want to cut you off, man. But man, you just hit home in a big way with that one too, man. You know, yeah, man, because I was very active in high school, and then I started doing music, and I never got rid of my bad eating habits. So I like just like you, I used to eat terribly, but I played so much basketball that I never became obese. And then when I got started doing music, I stopped playing basketball and I was just in the studio still eating the same. And
Yeah,
oh
yeah.
man, that sorry to cut you off, man, but I had that hit home for me. That's
No,
a
that's
big
real,
time.
man. That's what it becomes. No, that's absolutely right. That's what it becomes, man.
Yeah, man, I can't believe you were an all-state quarterback, though, man. I knew you played football from reading the book. Did you mention that in the book? Did I just totally gloss over that remark in this book?
No, because I didn't really dive heavy into the football aspect. But man, yeah, I was Russell Wilson before Russell Wilson was Russell Wilson. That's how I always describe myself. You know, I never cracked past 6 feet, but I had a ridiculous arm, still do actually, and man, just jets for days. Like I could take off and run in a minute, and um, man, for me, the only thing that really stopped me was the fact that I had an enlarged heart coming out of high school. So, you know, they considered it a murmur, but with that being the case, man, that enlarged heart, you know, colleges started looking at you as being too much of a risk. And
Yeah.
it really just kind of, you know, slowed everything down then because nobody wanted to take that chance to say, like, if something was to happen, you know, they were responsible or at fault, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, of all the, all the stuff that we're talking about, man, I just want to hammer home the point again to everybody listening is that if you're paying attention, you can literally overcome like 15 different things to become a better person. I mean, if you're hearing Richard talking, all the different things that he had to beat to become a motivational speaker, a motivational author, somebody who's living now a very positive lifestyle, helping other people. And I think there's something you say. It's your pain into your promise. Is that what you've said in the past?
Turn your pain into your power.
Oh wait, or no, that we say the same thing then because I've been saying that for a while too.
Yeah, man, turn that pain into power,
Oh,
man.
that's
You
cool.
know,
So,
turning
so
misery into to the mission, man. What's the mission fuel? You know, and that's the thing for me. I mean, man, everything that I've done up until this point, like people see power when I come and speak or whatever, and but the reality is that, man, truth be told, for me, man, my power is fueled by my pain, issues, and
yeah.
situations that I've gone through, and just really being able to find a voice within that.
Yeah, that's something I talk about with people often is not being afraid of that because like I feel like there's a lot of motivational people out there that really, I don't know, maybe they like downplay it or try to get you to ignore like the negative emotions we feel. And I feel like for me
Mhm.
anyway, I don't think I would have quit smoking or lost 200 pounds if I didn't use the same pain I used to use to hold me back became the same pain that began pushing me forward. And
Absolutely.
yeah, and I really found a power in it when I was trying to change my life. And that's when I realized, like, man, this negative stuff that's going on in my head, all this crazy shit, all the stuff I've been through, there's some serious energy in that if I just learn to channel it in a different direction. And I don't know,
Absolutely.
yeah, I love the fact that you said that, man, because I feel like a lot of people try to maybe, ignore it or push it down. And it's like, man, like that pain is such an asset to you if you just learn how to turn it in your favor.
Yeah. No, I think it's really important too because a lot of times, man, what tends to happen is that we do suppress it, but I think it's really pivotal for moments that we don't expect. Man, one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people go off of validation, or a lot of people want to question you. Definitely, like as an author, speaker, what makes you? Why should
Especially.
I sit in front of you and listen to your message?
Yeah.
Or what do you have that's gonna, that you can offer me? And or even, man, when it comes to just people and their opinions about your life and what you should do, or how you should be as far as your business or your happiness or whatever. And a lot of times, man, one thing that I have to remind myself, and I do it through my pain, is the fact that when I had to go through all of this stuff and overcome it on my own, you weren't there with me. you didn't deal with XYZ like I did. You didn't go through this process. You didn't go through this struggle. So your words mean nothing to me. I don't need to validate myself via a piece of paper because I'm the expert of my own experience. And the very thing that I'm about to come and drop knowledge to you on is the very thing that I overcame personally. Nothing a book can tell me, nothing a person can tell me, nothing, any speaker can tell me, but this is something that I've had to live through. So I think in those moments, it's really good to tap into that pain because that pain is a reminder of what you had to overcome. And simply put, that pain is a reminder of if you can overcome it in that moment, you can overcome it again. Because the test is always going to be the same at the end of the day. It might wear a different face, but at the end of the day, when you look at that pain and you look back at it, that pain is going to remind you that you've overcome it once before and you can continuously overcome.
Yeah, I like what you just said, too, about needing the validation and stuff, because that was something for me that only in the last year I finally overcame, which was not so much like the caring about what people thought. That was something I truly struggled with for a long time, and finally just something clicked inside and I just stopped giving a damn. Like I really just didn't care anymore, and it was of all things in my life that have ever happened, it was the most liberating experience I ever went through because I was like, wow, I really don't care anymore. Like I just didn't care after a while, and a lot of it was facing fears. Actually, I did a video about that recently because a lot of it was about facing the fear of being this version of me to friends and family who were used to the old crazy drunk party time Mario. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I always felt like, when we talked about the mask thing, I always felt like this version of me was there back then too, but I was so afraid of letting this out and being this version of myself, the one who's inspired and motivated. I felt scared about letting that out because I knew it would cost me people and I knew it would take a lot of work to maintain it. So I stayed being who I was because it was just easier being that way. But yeah, I mean, as like I said, in the last year, it was like, man, what an experience to finally say, you know what, man, this is who I am. If you don't like it, bounce. Like you can get
it. You're good.
Yeah,
no love lost. I mean, it's just at the end of the day, man, I look at it like this. Nobody is going to come and fill your shoes like you will. And I think that for me has been the motivation just to stop caring about other people's opinions and ways when it comes to how to live my life. Because I'm like, at the end of the day, you don't have to go to sleep with this dream, this vision. I do. You don't have to go to sleep with the torment or the issues and the problems that come along with becoming my better self. I do. So in that regard, you have absolutely nothing to say to me, and your points and opinions becoming valid at that moment, because you're not going to take the chance to walk my shoes. All you're going to do is tell me what you think I should do or criticize and judge me on what I'm doing. But at the same time, you can't even make the same changes in your own life. That's another story for another day. But you get my point, though, right?
Yeah. Oh, I get your point too much. But
you guys bring up a great point about the validation thing, because most people I know, that's their problem. No matter what they do, they're like, oh, my dad's not happy. My mom's not happy. It's like, well, wait, are you happy?
Yeah.
Right.
Because if you're happy, then you're doing something right. And if they're so concerned about you not fitting the mold, they're not happy in their life.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I think that guys like us who have dealt with being bullied, who have dealt with depression, anxiety, these mental, sorry. I told you.
That's only one for the night so far.
That's only one F word for the night, man. I'm trying to temper it back, but mainly I'm trying to temper it back because I know that Rich has a lot of followers, and I don't know if I don't know how the F word's gonna fly, but I have no idea. Oh, that's funny, man. Censor. Anyway,
what part of you? Mario, sorry to interrupt you guys. What part of your journey did I meet you in?
Halfway.
Okay.
The
So it was
halfway
was
point.
it after the
Oh
near
yeah,
death?
it was after the heart attacks.
But
and
it was
all that
before you
stuff.
really started hitting everything hard, wasn't it? It was like
No.
right before, because you were still doing the website and stuff, right?
Yeah, I was doing the website, but I was still working out all the time,
Were
and
you? Okay.
yeah, that was still there. But the motivational stuff didn't really. I didn't start trying to do this all the time until a little, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago.
Because you and I talked periodically about doing a show together, doing something together, especially
Yeah.
when Joe moved, and we finally got it together. But I remember during that time, as time went on, you did seem to get happier and more like
Well, that's what
confident in like what you were going to do.
I'm gonna lead right into that actually, but I just sorry about that, Rich. We're just having a random conversation.
Yeah,
It's
sorry.
all good.
Sorry about that.
But yeah, I think for guys like us, who dealt with these like crazy mental issues all our lives and have dealt with, trying to defeat our own personal demons, I at least for me, I know that overcoming because so much of my life has been predicated on acceptance, where you're bullied and you want people to like you. Girls don't like you, you want them to like you. Your friends want you to do a certain thing, so you'll do it just because you want them to stay liking you. That acceptance and that need for acceptance almost for me, it consumed me to the point where it was like I was doing so much stuff I didn't even want to do.
Right.
Just because I didn't want anybody to even be the least bit upset with me. And I don't know if you went through that as well, Richard. I know you said you went through dealing with like wearing masks to appease people, but did you go through that when it came to like the people pleasing stuff?
Yeah, all the time, all the time. It's like I'm basically living my life for other people. Trying to get, you want them to like you. You're trying, and you're trying to relate with everybody. Like all the time.
Yeah.
Like I was all the time.
Oh, go ahead.
Even
Well, you sounded like you were
nowadays.
about to say something.
Who, me?
Oh, it sounded like you were about to go into something there.
Well, I'm even, in certain spaces now, like, people are like, oh, well, you gotta be mindful of your audience because you don't want to offend anybody with your thoughts or your opinions on certain things. Like, so even when, hey, it's no secret, I'm a black man, right? So when I start
You
talking
sure?
about, when I start talking about my experience as a black man, definitely when it comes to the police, I didn't always grow up in, some of the nicer or the nicest areas in the city of Chicago. Now I have that commodity, but prior to it, it wasn't like that. So, I host a multitude of experience when it comes to, the side of the community violence or when it comes to the violence with the police. At the end of the day, like people are always, they'll sneak in the inbox after you post a status and be like, hey, so I noticed you said this and I just wanted you to be really careful. You probably shouldn't say that. And I'm like, what? Like, and at first,
You should
stuff
probably
like,
leave.
but no, and the reality is, man, at first I would care a lot about stuff like that. Or even when my first book, when I wrote my first book, I kind of opened up about dealing with depression and suicide. And of course, when you talk about marketing your book, how do you market your book? You market it by dealing with the real life issues that book or whatever that work, discusses.
Yeah.
So for me, man, I used to get a lot of people who, because in the black community and the minority communities, a lot of times, and I think communities in general, it's a taboo conversation. People really don't care to talk about or discuss or whatever. And even when the first book came out, nobody wanted to really talk about it. So when I actually finally, henceforth the name of the book, by the way, Unashamed, when I decided to actually go ahead and talk about it, folks are like, oh, I don't think that's good for you to share. Like I would get people in my inbox, or like I didn't realize I had so many folks who were on my page that knew my father, and my father would call me out of embarrassment because somebody else saw me posting about stuff about the book or promoting it or talking about depression or talking about mental health or talking about general motivational things that came from, overcoming depression. And it was like they would have such an opinion. And I'm like, wait, why am I constantly trying to go out to please you to say the right things or to make you feel as if I'm doing the right thing? Like I said, again, you're not living my process. You're not in my journey. Stay in your lane. And that's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite sayings in the world, by the way, stay in your lane.
It's become the getting back to Gotham favorite saying because I told RJ that over last
Yeah.
time we were
We have another podcast where we talk about movies and comic books and stuff, and that kind of became like the motto of the show because we kept bringing up people that were doing things that are a little bit out of their wheelhouse. But anyway, as you can tell, this is random as hell sometimes too. Actually, there was one other part of the book I wanted to bring up before I ask you these questions I had on the list, and it was because it hit home for me as well. And I wanted to know if you still do it, because you talked about with every negative thought, I was to speak a positive declaration out loud to counteract the thought. I did this every morning. So you did that after what happened with your ex-girlfriend, correct? After the whole the big fight you guys got into and everything.
Yep.
Do you still do that? Do you still feel the need to do it, or how's that working?
Yeah, no, I still do it. And the thing is, man, so I got this really dope. I read a lot now, so
Me
to me,
too.
I got this really dope book, and it's called it's workout of the day, but it's like positive affirming words, like just of the champion mindset, so to speak. So stuff like that. Prayer for me, man, is another big portion of affirmation. And really just, man, I have those conversations with myself, and I'm like, I'm not crazy, but hey, you know what, Rich, we got to get this together. This is what today looks like. This is your mantra. Let's do it.
Yeah. Dude, I've been having so many conversations with myself my whole life. It's just
Seriously, man.
um,
Sometimes you got to pull out that. Sometimes you got to pull out your phone and flip the camera to yourself and just look in the mirror and say, you got this, right? You know you're off the chain, right? Like, you got to.
man, I wish my conversations with me were that nice. Mine are more like, stop being a bitch. Just like, dude, just stop. That's enough, But I noted that part because the reason because this From Grateful to Greatness is a YouTube thing that I started, and then just recently we started it as a podcast because a lot of my followers were like, oh, you should do it as a show where you guys could talk more in depth about this stuff. But the reason I'm saying that is because gratitude was my practice that kind of brought me out of the constant negative mindset. And when you talked about that, I thought it was just interesting because it's a similar idea, but yours is more about like I guess personal affirmation. Mine became about not being so focused on the one negative thing versus the 99 positive things. And because I was always very predicated toward that, and I still struggle with it to this day, I'm not gonna lie, but definitely it became for me where I'd be really mad, and it still happens. I'd have a bad day, but I'd be like, well, at least I'm not dead, at least I have a home, at least I have a car, like it's very easy, I think, especially in our society, man, and it's something I've been wanting to talk about, which I just haven't gotten around to it, but in this social media right now, it's like, man, I think people right now think people are waking up in an after pic. Like they really think, like, what I mean by that is, the before and after pictures all the time.
Yeah.
I think people right now in their head are thinking you just wake up in the after picture. And like Richard especially talks a lot about the process. Right. And for me, I had to fall in love with the process of this stuff because you could only lose so much weight.
Right.
You could only, what I'm sorry, you could fade away,
No,
I
no,
guess.
you're right.
But I mean,
You're right.
But if you're so obsessed with the ultimate goal, you never really find any joy in just like going to the gym.
Like the journey.
Yeah,
it's not about what's the saying about you should always enjoy the journey, not just.
Which is very hard for people to do because I think people right now are just seeing all the highlight reel, like that's all they see now, and that's why with me I'm so
Good way of putting it.
I mean, it's true, dude. I think that's the way society right now is just seeing all the Jordan game winners. They're not seeing all the days he spent in the gym by himself,
Well, if it makes you feel better, my Facebook page is kind of like in the midsummer when there's no sports on and you watch Sports Center.
I definitely just, I don't know, man. That's why I feel like it's so necessary to be real and
Yeah.
show people the ups and the downs, because then at least it shows them like, man, this guy can overcome being depressed and still go out and do something positive, you know?
Very true.
But yeah, I noted that because it was very similar to something I do, so here's another similarity. Yay, everybody's the same.
I love it. That's what it's about, man.
So thank you for joining us for part 1 of the Richard Taylor Jr. interview. Mario and Richard were having a great time doing it, and good enough time that there's actually enough material for a part 2. So stay tuned, and it'll be posted in about a week. And remember, if you like what Mario's doing, like it, share it, tell your friends, families, coworkers, families, and thanks for listening.